Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Super Tees video. And rated BG Blitz is a rated solo queue mode of Battlegrounds and PvP coming in to the War Within, which is releasing in just around 3 days now at this point, and it's easily winning my heart as possibly my favorite game mode, which I didn't initially anticipate, but it is bringing me back to the days of when I played in Wrath of the Lich King and would just be spamming Battlegrounds all day. That's all that I did, and having this more competitive nature tied to it, the randomness and the chaos of the solo nature of it creates a lot of moments for amazing gameplay and funny opportunities. So I'm actually falling very much so in love with it. I've been streaming it pretty much every day for hours every day on my stream, which is linked in the description down below. But the purpose of today's video is to discuss which specializations I'm anticipating to be the top performers for this game mode, so that by the end of this video you'll have a good idea if the spec that you're thinking about playing specifically for this game mode is going to have a rough time or a good time. Now, sometimes people want an easier ride and they want to play what is going to be the best, and other players want to challenge themselves with the underdog specialization. So there's a lot of different angles to look at this depending on what you're looking for. But let's get started. We got a lot of specs since we're ranking all of the classes. Affliction Warlock is easily a top performer right now. It's doing monstrous amounts of damage. It has crazy damage profile. However, Warlock's main weakness in Battleground Blitz tends to be mobility. You're generally better on maps that focus around team fights. So this is something like Arathi Basin or Gilneas. These are two kind of like main ones, as well as the Miss Pandaria one with 5 bases. If you can get in a team fight area and have some impact and teammates that are also doing high amounts of damage, like other dot classes that you're synergized with, and some type of mortal wounds effect, you can definitely be very effective. Maps where you're a bit weaker tend to be things like Silver Shard Mines, where you're constantly having to relocate from one side of the map to another. Warlocks don't do that very well. They have a really tough time disengaging from a fight that they're already in. So if you're picking this spec, it's because you want to be like a team fight specialist, which, you know, the ideal strategies right now for Blitz are kind of avoiding team fights, which is going to put you down a bit. But I think that the amount of damage that you do is probably compensating a lot for it. And there are some tricks you can do with your portals and your gateways in order to try and navigate terrain. So for me, I think Warlock is definitely going to be either A or S. I might move this around. And again, if you're on left of the tree, it means you're better than the specs towards the right, to take that as part of the assessment. But we'll put it on A tier for now. It's looking like a really solid pick, but I do think its weaknesses are gonna start showing itself based on mobility. Arcane Mage, on the other hand, has no problem with mobility. You'll have a very easy time navigating away from engagements. Your 1v1 is really strong, which is really important, especially on maps where you've got nodes to capture and you might be facing 1 versus 1. Having alter time basically gives you almost complete immunity to just KO a lot of other classes. You have immunities so that you know, enemies trying to cap the base on you, you've got multiple ways to break out of crowd control effects and stop them from capping, which can be really good. And you have Ice Wall, which is probably the best Battleground Blitz ability in the game. I don't know if it's bugged at the moment, but there are ways to spawn Ice Wall basically inside of your character. So the only way that you can be hit by an enemy player is if they walk up to you and auto attack you. I was playing against Cubsy the other day in Blitz on the pre-patch, and he was doing that, dropping the Ice Wall, and I had finally figured out, like, how can I stop this? And you literally walk up to them and you auto attack them. It's the only way to stop them from capping with like this mid-wall thing. I don't know how they manage to not disconnect when they're doing it. It seems like a very weird thing, and maybe it'll get patched in the future. But for me, I think like Mage is a really good pick. You've got strong assassin potential for being able to just explode an enemy FC. You got invisibility. You've got good 1v1. So for me, I think you're coming in at least a solid S tier on Arcane Mage at the moment. The damage looks good for it. There's no weird tuning going on at max level. Arms Warrior. Warrior, again, is much like Affliction. You're going to be more oriented around team fight. Your 1v1 is not spectacular. You lose a lot of 1v1s, which can be, you know, pretty frustrating. It probably depends on team composition as towards like your viability. I think having Sharpened Blade and Blade Storm are really nice, though. You get a Sharpened Blade up on a flag carrier and then Blade Storm to immune getting peeled off of them, and you kind of can take them out. But I think Fury Warrior is likely going to be outperforming you at least a little bit. When it comes to the tuning and the numbers. So for me, Arms Warrior is probably falling a little bit short. You definitely have tools. You have the mobility to disengage from things, but I think your 1v1 is a little bit lacking. Not going to be like a great base holder. with only having one trinket to escape from crowd control. Like, you could pre-Blade Storm. You've got Fear to cap a base. Like, you can do like Storm Bolt into Fear, but you need to be having like CC around 4 seconds, I think, in order to cap a base. So it's not ideal. I think you can make it work, but it's probably going to be a bit more of an underdog. Not super underdog. Damage is at least still decent, but you're going to be more of like a team fight oriented specialization, much like Affliction, which in the current gameplay is probably not like the most ideal role to be fulfilling. Assassination, surprisingly not currently, I would say, the best rogue specialization. It was anticipated that it was going to be coming out as the best. It's still really good. And remember, I'm not talking about the pre-patch here. This is talking about beta. This is talking about 80 max level. You're still a rogue. You can still gouge, blind, sap, and you've got multiple ways in order to cap a flag over. You're the best class to kill in a flag carrier on a flag map. You are by far, as assassination or just almost as any rogue spec. You got burst. I'm putting this up on the god tier. Like, there's no doubt about it. There are some specs that are going to compete with you, obviously, up here on the god tier, but it's very few. It's just got the entire kit. You can smoke bomb cap. It's really good. It just has a huge amount of tools that enable it to be really good. It can get away from engagements, get to other bases really fast and really rapidly, changes the pace, and it's good in team fight because you still can do a good amount of damage as well in those situations. So really good. Balanced Druid, really well-rounded specialization, multiple builds. You can play Starfall if you've got like a team fight oriented composition with like Shadow Priests and Warlocks, and it, you know, the situation calls for it. You've got single target builds that are strong as well in order to take down enemy flag carriers. You can be a good flag carrier yourself. You can hold bases if you run Force of Nature, which is likely going to be the case with the hero talents coming out available for Boomkin, with the Grove Wardens for Resto, I should say, but the Force of Nature for balance is nice. You can summon in the Trance to give you a little bit of temporary time to hold a flag when maybe you don't have a trinket. Let's say you trinket a kidney shot when the rogue is capping and you summon Treants on them and you get blinded. You can sit that blind because your Treants will be covering your base while you're crowd controlled, so that's nice. Cyclone is obviously still really powerful. You can Solar Beam one healer, Cyclone another, and remove both healers at the same time. There are a few DPS that have that kind of on-demand CC to take 2 healers out of the game. Your weaknesses come in survivability. You're going to feel pretty weak in 1v1 situations when you don't have a healer, so might be an ideal spec to duo queue as, because you do have a good kit for capping bases over, killing flags, but if you don't have a healer kind of babysitting you a lot of times, you're going to feel pretty weak. So for me, I think Balanced Druid is likely coming in on S tier. He's really well-rounded for this mode, but if you're looking for like 1v1 specs, it's probably not the most ideal. Beast Mastery Hunter is an absolute no-go zone right now. Damage output is just not there. Recently got a huge heavy-handed nerf. Now it does have pets. It has stealth, so it's a decent base holder. That's probably where you're going to be excelling, is on any map where you can kind of hold a flag, camp your pets on the flag, and just spin it in that regard. And you've got immunities in order to survive that, but it's just its damage output has been taken out a lot, so I don't see it really. It's going to be really hard to make it work. Blood DK, fantastic tank. Absolutely fantastic tank. You got to be a little bit niche with what you're doing with it. I think like the death grip strategies, having played it myself now, is really the most effective way to play it. If you can take an enemy healer out of the game, ideally a priest. If there aren't a priest, you're a really good spinner because you're basically just unkillable. You can almost tank like entire team by yourself in a lot of cases. I actually went Kultiran on my Death Knight. I think Kultiran is super sleeper racial right now in BG Blitz. It gives you a knockback on classes that don't have one. So you can grip an enemy to the side of a pillar or side of a cliff, stun them, and then knock them off the side of a Kultiran. It's really good. I'm going to put it onto A tier for now. I think the problem with it mostly is going to be mobility, especially if you're getting like flag maps and you're fighting against maybe even a Brewmaster, or the enemy flag carrier is more mobile like a Druid or a Monk. You might struggle depending on the matchup. If they have a lot of really like fast rogues and stuff like that, can catch up to you. Unlike the Monk, who can just pour it away really easily, you don't really have that luxury. But it's definitely not bad. Brewmaster is also really solid right now. Really good spinner, has decent damage, good 1v1. Can work out well. It has the portal to be a flag carrier. Great spin. I'm going to be putting it up onto A tier. I think that it's a solid pick right now for BG Blitz, regardless of the map. Demonology, you're probably going to want to avoid this one at the moment. Damage is okay, but you're really flimsy. Really flimsy. You're probably, again, much like BM Hunter, you're going to be a base babysitter. Is going to be where you're going to find the most success in your games, at least, is to try and hold flag or bases in Eye of the Storm, hold bases in a Wrath Basin type of deal. You're probably going to camp out in one area. You get the same limitations as Affliction, but way less damage overall. Now, you do provide mortal wounds if you happen to not get a class that has it, but you're probably not on a great team composition in that situation where you got a team that doesn't have mortal wounds, like, and you're the only mortal wounds anyways. It's just mostly damage output. It had a couple of patches where it was looking really strong, but I think those abilities have been toned down since then. It's just a lot harder to work around with this in a BG situation, making sure your pet's keeping up with you, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are going into it. Destruction Warlock, on the other hand, I think is really good. Destruction has multiple builds. You can play instant cast when you're fighting at max level. You can play instant cast builds with the instant immolates, and it's going to help you when like an enemy team might have like 3 Death Knights, and that's really difficult to deal with at the moment in the pre-patch. But you have hero talents and builds, I think, at max level that will help you play instant cast builds to snipe out flag carriers. Warlock having coil is really nice. It's just like this extra DR that enemies can take damage in that not a lot of other classes have, which honestly maybe puts Demonology like a little bit ahead of BM. I'm gonna leave it here for now, but having the coils and Shadow Fury, so much like Boomkin, you can get like a double coil, which sends multiple healers out of the fight for a second. Double Shadow Fury, AoE Infernal, AoE CC is really good. You can crack out massive amounts of burst. It's really mobility where it starts to become a problem. Again, similar to Affliction, Silver Shard Mines, any maps like that where you need to be moving around and disengaging from fights can become very difficult. But I like the Shadow Rift with Warlock as well. You can place your portal in areas and then teleport enemies to your portal away from a flag. Like in Eye of the Storm, you put your portal on the bottom, teleport them to the bottom side, and then take the flag and run away with it. So you can make really big playmaking movements with the kit and utility that it has. The crowd control that it has is strong because enemies can take damage in it. And its damage is really good still at the moment. It's really good. I think Affliction is probably a little bit better, but it's very close. This is like a very hard one to discern exactly like which one is going to be better than the other, but I'm kind of edging towards Affliction right now. Devastation Evoker, I think it's kind of slept on. Its damage output is just really high. And it's really high. Like it does a massive amount of burst damage, can absolutely KO enemies, has AoE CC, a little bit of a longer cooldown, not really as long of a duration, but I think like being able to Scouring Flames and purge an entire team of all of their buffs, all their hots and everything like that, that has huge value in a team fight situation. You do have decent disengage. You're pretty much going to have to play hover snare removal as a PvP talent, because otherwise you're just going to be chain device and never move. But you've got knockbacks, which are obviously always going to be desirable. You can go and play around any sort of knock zone. You have good mobility. I don't know if I want to put it on A or S for BG Blitz. This is actually the first one that's like really hard. I feel like S is reserved for a particular category. Like you've really got mechanics that enable you. Like you've got Sleepwalk to cap bases. You can Aura Mastery it to remove the kicks as an option. You've got Shroud that can prevent enemies from capping on you. It has good tools that I would expect it to do well. So I'm gonna put it onto A tier right now. I think it's really good. It has good team fight utility. Good like enemy flag carrier assassination attempts. Might make an okay flag carrier. It's probably not the best. Like if you probably want to be like Prez if you're going to be a flag carrier as an Evoker, but I'm going to put it onto A tier for now. I think the damage is good enough on it that it should be there. Discipline Priest, damage is really high. That's the value that you're going to be providing in this instance, but your mobility is terrible. It's so bad. So again, on any sort of flag carry map, Silver Shard Mines, these maps where you need to move a lot, you're going to feel really weak. But its damage and its output is so high that I think it is compensating for it a lot. So because of that, I'm going to put it onto A tier. But the mobility is really bad. You're going to probably likely feel really map dependent with this spec, where you queue into Silver Shard Mines and you're fighting against Druid Monk, and you're just like, I can't move. I can't get to the next cart. I'm stuck here. There's a Death Knight. Somebody help. But then you'll get other maps where it's like a consistent team fight in one area, and your output is going to scale really well relative to other healers. Mass Dispel, Ultimate Penance to Immune CC. You've got nice, utility and kit there to deal with engagements, and with the current tuning I think that it is definitely decent, so we'll put it onto A tier for now. Elemental Shaman, really good, well-rounded, lots of disruption with Grounding Totem and Wind Shear, really annoying. Static Field, Thunderstorm, moving enemies away from objectives. These are things that are really desirable. Hex, not super effective, but can be situationally really good. You have decent 1v1, but maybe not the best. But you have really good healing and self-sustain is what I've noticed. It's one of the few DPS now that can still actually like consistently recover its health with Healing Surge. And Stone Bulwark Totem Absorb is really strong. So this one I'm kind of struggling with wanting to put on S or A. I want to put it on S for now. I think that it is actually very good. It's very well-rounded. You have Bloodlust, you have great team buffs that really amp up the damage of your team to also take into consideration. You have good mobility with Ghost Wolf to be able to disengage from situations and Gust of Wind. I think that this is definitely a fair position for Ellie right now going into level 80. Enhance, you're probably not going to want to tread these waters. Again, these are like underdog specs. Maybe Enhance is more of an underdog, whereas BM and Demo are maybe a bit like undertuned, and you know their niche roles that they're going to be put in are not super dynamic. But Enhance would be an underdog. Like I think you're gonna have to make it work here with this one. You got the same type of disruption as Ellie, but you need to compromise your positioning a lot. You're really susceptible to CC, and your mobility is not good. I think that this is likely going to be where you feel is Enhanced. Feral Druid, this is a tough one, because I think like a good Feral Druid can be like a Boomkin or a Rogue. It can roam around, it can take bases, can be okay flag carrier, can be a good flag carrier killer. So it's definitely got the kit. I haven't seen if anyone's like built any sort of like bleed builds. If it ends up being, you know, get like a team fight map or a map where playing, or a composition that playing as a team fight would be ideal for it as Feral, but I want to say it's like at least A. The only reason I'm putting it lower is because it's a melee. I think generally, if you're a melee that doesn't like have immunities or something to get away from something like Cloak of Shadows, it can be a little bit tougher to peel out of certain situations. But it's definitely not bad. You have mortal wounds. You have Cyclone, obviously, which is still really strong. I think it's really good. Fire Mage, again, the main reasons I think Fire Mage is still good is Ice Wall, Alter Time, Ice Wall, but its damage got nerfed heavily. It does not have the same type of punch that it used to. I think it's probably slightly better than BM, Demo, or Enhance in a BG situation just because it's still a Mage and the other tools that it has, but its damage is not going to feel comparable to Arcane or Frost at this current time. But its baseline kit, I think, is still the Mage kit. You still have knockback, still have sheep, still have all the baseline Mage stuff, which is keeping it from going down onto the D tier given its current tuning. Frost Mage, this is a tough one that I kind of want to put onto God tier because its damage output is really good right now. Its damage output is remarkably good. I think having the snares, the constant snares to prevent enemies from moving, makes it a really good spec to have in BG Blitz over something like Arcane. It has assassination potential if you want to run Ray of Frost or Glacial, but I think a lot of people are opting out of that now on the beta. Has really good damage, has all the same utility. I'm going to put it on God right now given the current tuning, and maybe, again, that could move, that could change. I'm going to be updating these videos, so make sure to smash the subscribe button so you're always up to date and don't miss any of those changes. But I think Frost is definitely a really strong contender for BG Blitz. Frost Death Knight, again, you're a Death Knight, so there's some classes that just have baseline value regardless of their tuning. And Chains of Ice, AoE Blinding Sleet, AoE Stuns, Death Grip is just mechanics that are always going to be desirable. They're almost like inescapable mechanics in a lot of situations for Battlegrounds. So the tuning is not great for Frost right now, but I think in AoE situations it can still perform pretty well. You know, on like Arena where you got like niche compositions you need, you can kind of still create those situations. So I definitely think it's either A or S. It feels weird putting it on the same tier as Unholy, but I think it's definitely still really good. I think Death Grip and Chains of Ice easily put it up into another category. Fury Warrior does remarkable damage, really good damage, strong MS effect, good team fight potential. Having Bladestorm 2 immune, much like Arms Warrior. I think it's probably better than Arms Warrior. I'm going to put it up on the A tier for now, which is, you know, this spec in Arena. I think if you're looking at like Arena tier lists, a lot of people are putting it on God tier, S tier. But I think in Battleground situations, Warrior can get kited a lot. Doesn't have like the best disengage. Fury Warrior is a little bit better 1v1 though. Doesn't have like the best way to cap bases either, with only Intim Shout as like a guaranteed cap. A lot of classes have a way to get out of Intim. I think that's definitely putting it down a few paces. I think it's fair to say it's probably A, just given its tuning. Its tuning is carrying it more than its kit. Guardian Druid, still really good flag carrier, still really good base sitter. You know, it's just still a beef nugget. Doesn't really take a lot of damage. Stealth, obviously, I think kind of puts it up onto a little bit of a higher tier. Although I think it's been noticeably weaker in more recent patches. Is it really? It might not. I don't know. Like the tuning of Brewmaster is starting to come up. I think it's challenging. And so Guardian, this might be a little bit too of a high ranking, honestly, for Guardian. Well, I'll probably come back to this when I see it a little bit more than I have been seeing it, but I think Guardian could be a little bit lower than that. Demon Hunter has really good 1v1, really good team fight, AoE CC, has AoE defensive cooldowns. It's like one of the best 1v1 specs in the game. You can play Night Elf obviously for Shadow Meld in order to kind of like hide and prevent someone from capping a base in some chances. Spectral Sight to be able to pull out any stealthies at a given moment is really good as well, to see if somebody's sneaking away to try and get past to get the flag. You have a lot of mechanics that make you really good. Damage I'd say is maybe a bit average though. I don't know if is it really average? I think it's definitely A tier. I'm gonna put it like here above Feral. It's probably the best A tier melee DPS that you could play at the moment. I really want to put it higher than this. I'm not gonna lie, I really do. But then it feels like we're flooding the S tier a lot. Holy Priest, this one, unlike Disc, does not compete with the numbers and has all of the drawbacks of playing a priest healer in Battlegrounds, where you're just getting snared and kited. I don't think it's gonna be a rough ride if you want to bring a Holy Priest into BG Blitz. Holy Paladin's very similar. It's just been getting nerf after nerf after nerf, so its throughput is much lower. It has other tools though, like Freedom, which can be really good for getting FCs across the map. Doesn't provide a huge amount of damage in a BG situation though. Can get AoE CC with AoE blind. I think it's probably at least a tiny bit better than Holy Priest, just that because it has Freedom. And it has Sacrifice, so you can redirect damage to yourself in really critical situations when holding on to something. And then also having like multiple immunities of CC makes it a bit better for like emergency spin situations, I think, than Holy Priest. So I'm going to say it's like a little bit better. I think the throughput is also a bit better than Holy Priest right now. Marksman Hunter, really good, really good. Has a lot of damage, really high damage. At the moment, absolutely going to crack a lot of the mages. So like this could be like a heads up pick, because a lot of people are, I think, planning to play mage, and Hunter could absolutely destroy mages in that regard. Camouflage to sneak up for stealth, lots of tools to be able to cap bases or hold bases. You can play pet obviously to defend. You can sneak in with camouflage. So for me, I feel like Hunter is definitely like a pretty solid S tier pick. It's got all of the things. It's got knockbacks as well for knockback maps. Really good team fight. Maybe it's 1v1, it's not great, but its defenses for Hunter got buffed a lot. I think it's in a great spot for playing Blitz. Mistweaver Monk, really good pick for BGs. Now, Mistweaver in arenas, not so much. This is where you're going to start to see some discrepancies probably between players' tier lists, is that in BGs, Monks are crazy good. They just highest mobility. They have so many chi torpedoes with the hero talents now. And the portal when they're holding a flag is just insane. And even in team fight situations, having a portal can just absolutely change the pace of a game. And it's all about mobility. So I really want to say that Mistweaver is probably God tier for this bracket, even at level 80. Even given that, in arena it's not that great. You probably want to not play Fistweaver. I'm trying to think of a situation where maybe you could, like maybe Gilneas, where it's like one team fight is deciding the game, so you can stay in that area and get more value. But any other map where you've got to constantly be moving and standing in good positions and flag carrying, you definitely don't want to be fist weaving. Outlaw Rogue, not as bad as I anticipated. I think you actually make a pretty decent flag carrier with the grappling hook for escape mechanisms, and you are honestly very tanky. So I don't think that this is D tier. I actually think Outlaw Rogue can actually work. You still have all the advantages of stealth, smoke bomb, still have these crowd control effects to cap bases. So I'm actually putting Outlaw Rogue a little bit higher for BG Blitz than maybe a lot of people would have anticipated. I think a lot of people are putting it down onto D tier in this type of situation, but its damage output is okay. Can provide decent team fight. You don't have the burst is where like assassination and subtlety really take over specifically, but it's not, I wouldn't say that it's awful. Preservation Evoker, absolute god tier healer in arena. It's a really good healer in BGs as well with the mobility that it has. Tons of really just powerful healing effects, CC immunities, Scouring Flame for Fire Breath Purge on a whole team can be really clutch, much the same as it would be for Devastation. I don't know. Do I think that it's better than Mistweaver? Honestly, the healers for BG Blitz, ignoring like Holy Priest and possibly Holy Paladin, are really hard to rank. Really hard to rank. So I'm going to come back to this a bit later. Prot Warrior is probably not that great from what I've seen. Damage output, not fantastic or comparable to something like Brewmaster. Spin potential is okay. You can, root people up. But you don't have a lot of CC immunities like these specs have in these situations with the mobility that they have. So I think it's definitely going to be a little bit lackluster. Prot Paladin, I'm sorry, but this bad boy is not cutting it. It is just not cutting it. It does not have enough damage relative to the other tanks. Has okay spin, but like your mobility is really bad. It's really bad. Again, Prot Paladin PvP has operated as like a second healer in a lot of cases, but I don't see it performing at like a really high level at the moment. Resto Shaman, on the other hand, is super sleeper. I think with Static Field Thunderstorm, even Windrush Totem and like Totem Recall to get multiple Windrush Totems can get your team a lot of mobility that a lot of other healers don't have in really clutch situations that I've started to see a lot of really skilled Shamans doing. You do have the ability to offer damage. Grounding Totem's invaluable in BG Blitz. You have Elementals that you can summon in that can spin nodes for you in emergency situations when you think you're going to get CC'd. So like for me, I think Resto Shaman is like easily S tier, possibly even higher. And I say, like I said, the healer rankings for this are so hard to do because each of them have such, most of them at least have really remarkable things they can provide. Rep Paladin right now at level 80 is not doing as much damage. Like in the pre-patch, I'd say this thing is like S tier. It's doing so much damage. You don't have a lot of damage. I'm gonna throw it up onto B tier for now, in BG situations, because this is a spec that's gonna live or die off tuning. You don't have amazing mobility, the double freedom steed, and then you're going to be waddling around for a bit. You're easily CC'd, but you're a great base sitter with multiple immunities, so you can just kind of like trade between immunities in order to hold a flag against something like a rogue, for example. You do have a lot of CC as well to cap on a single target. You can hodge a target. If they trinket, you can blind them and you can cap. So you do have like decent tools in terms of turning flags over. But I think the tuning right now at level 80 is kind of what's holding Rep back more than anything. Shadow Priest is remarkably good. Super sleeper spec at the moment. Great utility, great damage. Psyfiend is invaluable in team fights. Can absolutely sway it, and you can just take out an enemy member by themselves. So for me, I think Shadow is like really good onto this. Remember, left to right means like best to worst on that tier. So compare range to range, melee to melee, tanks to tanks, healers to healers. Subtlety Rogue, this one is probably the best spec in the game to play at the moment. Damage output is a little bit higher than Assassination. I think Shadowy Duel in terms of swaying a team fight is, invaluable. You're going to want that. Has higher mobility. It's just super fast at all times. You probably just solo it EFC by itself. I think in a lot of situations, smoke bomb cap, same advantages as the other spec. You can probably flip between these depending on your playstyle a little bit, but I think sub probably edges a little bit ahead at the moment. Survival Hunter, super underrated. I actually think it is really good. Has really good damage output at the moment. Decent 1v1. It's a lot tankier since the defensive rework and buffs that it got. It has ways to CC with roots, knocks, and diamond ice traps to get enemies out of bases. I think it's like at least A tier. At least A tier, if not possibly sleeper a little bit higher, but we'll leave it on A tier for now. Unholy Death Knight, again, Death Knight kit is just so good that I can't not put this in S. I honestly want to put it on God. You know what? I'm taking a chance here. I'm putting it on God tier. I think Unholy DK has really good damage output, strong sustain, insane crowd control breakers, has a pet in order to hold bases. Death Grip is invaluable. Chains of Ice is invaluable. Completely changes the pace of a game if you're good at being aware of where people are trying to cross the map and stopping them from moving. Damage output is solid. Defense is solid. I think at BG Blitz, it's fair that I think this is a fair spot to put it. Vengeance Demon Hunter, really good FC, has a lot of CC. Decent spinning capabilities. Haven't seen a lot of it, so it's harder for me to say how good it is, but I would say typically it ends up being better than a lot of the other tanks. Historically, it's usually been the best. So I'm imagining that lineage is going to be sticking with it here. So I put it on the S tier for now. Mostly not putting it on God tier because I have limited time seeing it, but based on its history, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be, it would be terrible. Augmentation Evoker, a hard one. This is a hard one. You do provide the main stat to your team fight. Got a lot of durability. You can put scales on allies that are FCing. It could be... This is a hard one. Aug is a very hard one. I think Scouring Flame Purge is still really good. But I just never see it. This is the hardest reason to rank this. Is I never see it. I feel like it's probably going to perform similar to Devastation, so I'll put it on A tier for now. And I think the tuning on it is still really strong for what I've seen in solo shuffle arenas. So it'll likely feel decent, I would say at least, or really solid here being on the A tier. Windwalker Monk can be good. You have the advantages of Mistweaver and Brewmaster in terms of mobility in those situations. 1v1 is really good. You provide MS in team fight. You got multiple ways in order to sneaky cap. You got knockbacks. I think this one's definitely a sleeper. Am I I kind of want to move this around. I think Demon Hunter is S tier. I think Windwalker is maybe A tier. Maybe Feral Druid's a little higher. I think Windwalker is slept on a lot. And now I got these two specs that are probably the hardest to rank because I think they're both God tier. But then that puts 3 healers potentially in God tier, which is honestly ideal. Having all the healers be indistinguishable in terms of how powerful they are would be really good balance for the game. That will likely incentivize a lot the queue times to be really short. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just hard when you're comparing them side by side. Because Mistweaver and Resto Druid can both flag carry. I say Mistweaver on maps where you've got Z-axis more so Warsong Gulch than Twin Peaks where the Z-axis isn't as great because you can't go up 3 levels like Warsong. So it's a little bit map dependent, but I think Mistweaver comes out ahead on the flag carrying front. Resto Druid can ninja bases probably easier with Bash Cap and Clone Cap than Mistweaver can specifically, but I don't know. Song of Chi-Ji with Leg Sweep. I feel like the base ninja capping is probably about the same. Healing output's about the same in team fights, so they're really close. I'm gonna put Mistweaver slightly ahead of Resto Druid, but they're both on the god tier. And then Preservation Evoker is the hardest one because this throughput is just so good, but I don't think it's a better flag carrier than a Mistweaver or a Druid, which is the only thing somewhat holding it back. It's also probably not the best for like trying to take a base away from somebody, unlike a Mistweaver or a Resto Druid could possibly be, and it doesn't have stealth. Its mobility is probably mid-range in that regard. So BG Blitz situation, I'm going to say it's god tier, but it's at the bottom of the god tier at the moment for BG Blitz. Again, if this is Arena, I'd say it's the best healer. There's no comparison. And maybe the healing output is actually so high that it ends up just being the best at the end of the day. This is more of a prediction based on my analysis and my experience so far, having observed a lot of the matches and seeing the class design on the betas up to this point. So I will adjust this. I'm sure that some of this is going to be at least a little bit wrong, maybe a lot of it wrong, because a lot of players may not have fully explored the hero talents that are available, but this is my assessment so far for it. Hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Hope that it's got you guys thinking about what is it going to be like depending on the spec that you're thinking about and what you should expect for that specialization's performance. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one.